Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves. You clicked for chaos, and chaos is precisely what you're about to witness. We promised you that Jasmine Crockett's viral insult would turn a Trump rally into unadulterated pandemonium, and that promise, in the annals of political history, was delivered. This is the story of how a single, brutal phrase shattered the illusion of control and ignited a firestorm no one could extinguish. Before the storm, there was silence. Before the screams, there was a roar. This was the moment the former president felt invincible, unaware that his meticulously crafted stage was about to become the epicenter of a political earthquake. Picture it, a cavernous sports arena pulsating with a sea of red hats. The air crackled with an almost religious fervor, thousands packed in, bathed in the glow of colossal jumbotrons. Every flag, every chant, every beat of the patriotic music was perfectly orchestrated. Donald Trump, the undisputed maestro of this symphony, strode onto the stage, beaming. He was the conductor, the crowd his loyal orchestra, ready to play his tune. He basked in the adulation, soaking it in, then approached the podium, a familiar smirk playing on his lips. He felt, for all the world, like he was back in control. His voice boomed, perfectly amplified, filling every corner of the stadium. "Hello, patriots! Look at this crowd! The fake news won't show you this, but we know the truth, don't we?" The response was a deafening wave of cheers, his cue to launch into the well-worn, yet ever-effective, campaign rhetoric. He spoke of making America great again, the rigged system, and inevitably the rallying cry of his base, immigration. They want open borders, they want to let everyone in, criminals, terrorists, rapists, and they want you to pay for it, not on my watch. We built the wall and we're going to finish the wall. It's going to be bigger, stronger, better than ever before. We believe in law and order. We believe in borders. A rhythmic, guttural, build the wall chant rose from the crowd, a predictable, comforting sound. Trump preened, absorbing the energy, feeling utterly, supremely in command. Backstage, his team watched, nodding, smiling. This was the blueprint. This was working. Nothing could touch them here. This was the pinnacle of his confident performance, the final breath of calm before the deluge. He had no idea that at that very instant, a different kind of soundbite was already tearing through the digital world, a soundbite that would turn his triumphant rally into a battleground. The quiet hum of backstage monitors was about to transform into a frantic cacophony as a new, more lethal weapon was unleashed from an unexpected source. You thought you'd seen viral. You thought you understood how a single phrase could ignite the internet. You were wrong, because what happened next was not just viral. It was an explosion delivered with surgical precision aimed directly at the former president's most carefully guarded vulnerability. Behind the stage, the inner sanctum of the campaign, Hope Daniels, Vic Moreno, Carla McNair, Rudy Finch. They were gathered around a monitor, observing Trump's confident performance, the atmosphere relaxed, almost celebratory. Phones buzzed with routine updates. Then, the almost violent tremor of Hope Daniels' personal phone set to vibrate for only the most urgent alerts. She glanced down, her brow furrowing. A premonition, perhaps? Her eyes widened as she tapped the screen, and the world began to tilt. A short video clip playing on a relentless loop instantly dominated her screen. It was Jasmine Crockett, 45, framed in a tight shot, her expression intense, unwavering. She stared directly into the camera, leaning slightly forward, as if delivering a personal indictment to every single viewer. The background was sparse, professional, almost clinical. And then came the words, clear and cutting. "You want to deport families, Mr. Trump? You want to talk about breaking rules? Fine. Then look in your own house first. You want to deport migrant wives? Then deport your own wife." The final phrase wasn't a question. It wasn't rhetorical. It was a shout, a direct accusation, delivered with visceral, unadulterated force. It was personal. It was raw. It was a complete departure from her previous, more rhetorical, "Do we start with the First Lady?" comment. Hope's face drained of color. Her jaw dropped. She stared at the screen, transfixed. "Oh my God, she didn't," she whispered, barely audible. She shoved the phone violently towards Vic Marino. Marino, initially annoyed by the interruption, took the phone. His face shifted from irritation to disbelief, then to grim horror. No. This is a nightmare. He knew, they all knew, the carefully constructed facade, the impenetrable shield around the former First Lady, had just been breached. This wasn't just another soundbite, it was a digital grenade, perfectly timed, detonating across every digital platform simultaneously. It didn't just go viral, it became a force multiplier, instantly transforming the political landscape. The tremor backstage was just the first ripple. Out in the vast, unsuspecting crowd, that ripple was about to become a tsunami, engulfing the rally in a wave of unforgiving truth. What happens when a tightly controlled political rally, a bastion of loyalty, is suddenly hijacked by a single, damning phrase? You're about to see the precise moment the cheers died and the chaos began. The digital grenade, once confined to backstage phones, exploded across the crowd. It wasn't just on X. It flooded WhatsApp groups, Telegram channels, Instagram stories. It was retweeted, reshared, remixed at an unprecedented rate, faster than any strategist could comprehend. In the midst of the "Build the Wall" chant, phones began to light up, becoming tiny screens illuminating bewildered faces. People were checking their devices, their expressions shifting from partisan fervor to confusion, then shock. A young man in a front row red MAGA hat stared at his phone, his mouth agape. He looked up at the Jumbotron where Trump was still confidently delivering his speech, completely oblivious. The contrast was jarring. A woman near him gasped, her voice trembling. "Did you just see this? Crockett, she just said his own wife." A ripple of murmurs started to spread, like an invisible wave, through the stadium. Confusion turned into a low hum, then a growing buzz. People began to point, not at Trump, but at their phones, at each other. Trump, mid-sentence, railing against radical Democrats, paused, his eyes narrowing. He'd heard an isolated shout cut through the noise. "Deport your own wife," he heard. He squinted into the crowd, trying to locate the source, dismissing it with a forced chuckle. "Oh, they send their little protesters, don't they? Sad, very sad, they just can't stand how good we're doing." But then, another voice. And another. More phones flashed, screens of outrage and revelation. People were openly watching the viral clip, eyes wide. "Deport your own wife!" They began to echo, louder, more defiant. A small, organized group, clearly counter-protesters, strategically positioned, began chanting in unison. Their voices, though few, were amplified by their raw intensity. "Deport your own wife! Deport your own wife!" The chant, raw, provocative, and deeply personal, struck a nerve. It resonated, amplified by the shock and sudden realization spreading through the crowd. Some loyal Trump supporters, initially confused, began getting visibly angry, turning towards the chanters. Others, however, now looked at their phones, then back at Trump, a flicker of uncomfortable understanding in their eyes. The Jumbotrons, normally showing Trump's face, now split. Trump, his face hardening, and live footage of pockets of the crowd starting to erupt. A few rows back, a violent altercation broke out. A Trump supporter, enraged, lunged at someone filming the chanting. A fistfight ensued. Security personnel, already on edge, rushed towards the disturbance, struggling to separate the combatants. The orderly flow of the rally collapsed. Murmurs turned into shouts, then into a cacophony of boos, furious cheers from counter-protesters, and the insistent, growing, damning chant. "Deport your own wife! Deport your own wife!" Trump's eyes darted wildly. His face became a mask of pure, unadulterated fury, his knuckles white on the podium. He screamed into the mic, his voice cracking. "Quiet! You're losers! Fake news! Total disrespect! You're a disgrace!" But it was futile. The chaos was too widespread, too deeply personal. The rally was no longer his. It had been violently hijacked by a single, brutal, and deeply personal phrase. The crowd, once his loyal audience, fractured into a screaming, uncontrollable organism. As the rally descended into pandemonium, far away in the West Wing, a different kind of storm was brewing, a crisis meeting where the architects of power would face the unthinkable, total loss of control. What happens when a tightly controlled political rally, a bastion of loyalty, is suddenly hijacked by a single, damning phrase? You're about to see the precise moment the cheers died and the chaos began. The digital grenade, once confined to backstage phones, exploded across the crowd. It wasn't just on X. It flooded WhatsApp groups, Telegram channels, Instagram stories. It was retweeted, reshared, remixed at an unprecedented rate, faster than any strategist could comprehend. In the midst of the Build the Wall chant, phones began to light up, becoming tiny screens illuminating bewildered faces. People were checking their devices, their expressions shifting from partisan fervor to confusion, then shock. A young man in a front row, red MAGA hat, stared at his phone, his mouth agape. He looked up at the Jumbotron where Trump was still confidently delivering his speech, completely oblivious. The contrast was jarring. A woman near him gasped, her voice trembling. "Did you just see this? Crockett, she just said..." His own wife. A ripple of murmurs started to spread, like an invisible wave, through the stadium. Confusion turned into a low hum, then a growing buzz. People began to point, not at Trump, but at their phones, at each other. Trump, mid-sentence, railing against radical Democrats, paused, his eyes narrowing. He'd heard an isolated shout cut through the noise. "Deport your own wife," he heard. He squinted into the crowd, trying to locate the source, dismissing it with a forced chuckle. "Oh, they send their little protesters, don't they?" Sad, very sad. They just can't stand how good we're doing. But then, another voice, and another. More phones flashed, screens of outrage and revelation. People were openly watching the viral clip, eyes wide. "Deport your own wife," they began to echo, louder, more defiant. A small, organized group, clearly counter-protesters, strategically positioned, began chanting in unison. Their voices, though few, were amplified by their raw intensity. "Deport your own wife! Deport your own wife!" The chant, raw, provocative, and deeply personal, struck a nerve. It resonated, amplified by the shock and sudden realization spreading through the crowd. Some loyal Trump supporters, initially confused, began getting visibly angry, turning towards the chanters. Others, however, now looked at their phones, then back at Trump, a flicker of uncomfortable understanding in their eyes. The Jumbotrons, normally showing Trump's face, now split. Trump, his face hardening, and live footage of pockets of the crowd starting to erupt. A few rows back, a violent altercation broke out. A Trump supporter, enraged, lunged at someone filming the chanting. A fistfight ensued. Security personnel, already on edge, rushed towards the disturbance, struggling to separate the combatants. The orderly flow of the rally collapsed. Murmurs turned into shouts, then into a cacophony of boos, furious cheers from counter-protesters, and the insistent, growing, damning chant, "Deport your own wife! Deport your own wife!" Trump's eyes darted wildly. His face became a mask of pure, unadulterated fury, his knuckles white on the podium. He screamed into the mic, his voice cracking, "Quiet! You're losers! Fake news! Total disrespect! You're a disgrace!" But it was futile. The chaos was too widespread, too deeply personal. The rally was no longer his. It had been violently hijacked by a single, brutal, and deeply personal phrase. The crowd, once his loyal audience, fractured into a screaming, uncontrollable organism. As the rally descended into pandemonium, far away in the West Wing, a different kind of storm was brewing, a crisis meeting where the architects of power would face the unthinkable, total loss of control. They say never let a good crisis go to waste. But what if you engineered the crisis? What if the chaos was not an accident, but a calculated strike designed to expose a truth too long ignored? In her Capitol Hill office, Jasmine Crockett sat, calm and collected, watching a live feed of the pandemonium she had unleashed at Trump's rally. Her young staffer, Chloe, and seasoned press aide, Sarah, buzzed around her, a mixture of awe, trepidation, and deep vindication on their faces. Chloe stammered, "Congresswoman, are you seeing this? It's utterly insane. The rally is falling apart. People are fighting. It's anarchy." Crockett, her face a picture of serene resolve, simply nodded slowly. "I see it, Chloe. It's exactly what I expected. The truth, finally, has nowhere left to hide." Sarah, her phone pressed to her ear, listening, then pulling it away, delivered the grim news. "The blowback is immense. Fox News is already running headlines about personal attacks and un-American smears. And some Democrats, they're calling, quietly expressing extreme nerves. They think you've gone too far." Crockett turned to Sarah, her eyes sharp, unwavering. "Nerves? They're nervous because I dared to say what everyone already knows but is too afraid to utter. They're nervous because it shines a blinding light on how hypocritical and fundamentally unjust this entire system is. My words aren't an attack, Sarah. My words are a mirror. And some people, especially those in power, absolutely despise what they see reflected back." Sarah, hesitant, asked, "What's the play now? Do we issue a clarification, try to temper it, walk it back?" Crockett shook her head firmly, a determined set to her jaw. "Number, absolutely not. We double down. We lean into the truth, head first. This isn't about being polite. This is about being heard. This is about demanding accountability. Get me a statement drafted and I want an interview, a major one." Chloe, wide-eyed, stammered, An interview? Now, in the middle of all this?" Crockett's voice was firm, cutting through Chloe's fear. "Yes. Now, I didn't say that to score cheap political points. I said it because we have millions of people in this country who live in constant, crushing fear every single day. Fear of a knock at the door, of losing their families, of being told they don't belong in a country they've built lives in. And I'm tired of watching the system make exceptions only for the powerful, only for the privileged. If he wants to deport wives for minor infractions, if he demands that level of scrutiny for everyone else, then he needs to look in his own house first. It's not an insult, it's a direct challenge to his entire fraudulent credibility." She looked at her team, her gaze piercing, confident. "Get me on a primetime show. No softballs. I want to talk about fairness. I want to talk about consistency. And I want to ask America, if Melania Trump gets a free pass, if she gets the grace of silence, why doesn't my constituent Rosa Alvarado, whose husband was deported for an expired document, get even an ounce of that same mercy? That's the question this country has to answer." With absolute resolve, Jasmine Crockett didn't just stand by her words, she amplified them, turning a single, explosive comment into a calculated political maneuver designed to force a national conversation, ensuring the chaos would not be in vain. As Crockett prepared to speak her truth to power, the subject of her devastating insult, Melania Trump, remained cloistered in her opulent tower, her silence now speaking louder and more damningly than ever before. In the heart of opulence, a silence deeper than any political spin settled. It was the silence of power, of privilege, and of a woman whose carefully cultivated mystique was now being shattered by a single, brutal question. Melania Trump, 55, sat rigidly on a plush, minimalist sofa in her sprawling Fifth Avenue residence. The muted sound of a news channel occasionally drifted from a hidden speaker, its grim tone barely penetrating the opulent silence. Aides moved around her like ghosts, walking on eggshells. She had maintained her stoic, dignified silence throughout the initial controversy surrounding Jasmine Crockett's First Lady comment. But the new "deport your own wife" insult had landed differently. This was no longer about a rhetorical question about immigration policy. This was a direct public accusation of hypocrisy, aimed squarely at her, and by extension at her husband's core political identity. Her longtime aide, Anna, approached cautiously, a palpable sense of dread clinging to her. "Madam, the coverage is intense. Mr. Trump is furious. He's asking if you'd consider a statement, even a brief one, to reaffirm your legal status, to shut them down. He says he's prepared to release your full documents." Melania turned slowly, her head tilting slightly. Her face, usually a mask of perfectly composed serenity, held a subtle flicker of something akin to profound hurt, or perhaps overwhelming weariness. Her eyes, however, remained fixed on Anna's, devoid of the usual warmth. She remained silent for a long moment, her gaze unblinking. Anna, pleading softly, continued, "It's just this new phrase, it's more personal. The rally footage is everywhere, it's turning into a symbol. People are saying your silence is making it worse." Melania closed her eyes for a fleeting moment, a deep, almost imperceptible breath. She opened her eyes again. The flicker of vulnerability was gone, replaced by the familiar, impenetrable calm. A chilling poise. "They don't deserve my voice, they never have," she whispered, her voice low but firm. Anna nodded, defeated, her shoulders slumping. Melania turned back to her private world, her face once again unreadable, composed, but the silence now felt heavier, more deliberate, and for millions watching, more damning than any accusation could be. In her fortress of silence, Melania Trump became a reluctant symbol, her carefully guarded privacy now exposed to a relentless public reckoning, her unspoken past a testament to the very hypocrisy Jasmine Crockett sought to unmask. The question of deport your own wife had found its answer, not in words, but in the profound absence of them. As Melania's silence resonated, the wider world outside her gilded cage erupted, fueled by personal stories and media frenzy, transforming a political insult into a seismic societal reflection. When a single insult opens a wound, the nation bleeds. This wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about every family torn apart, every dream deferred, and every injustice suddenly laid bare for the world to see. The news cycle, already a roaring firestorm, went nuclear. Every major outlet led with the chaos rally. Headlines screamed, "Trump rally erupts in chaos." "Deport your own wife" chant rocks campaign. News anchors, their voices grave, dissected every frame of the tumultuous rally footage, the muffled sounds of the "deport your own wife" chant audible beneath their sober commentary. But it wasn't just the professional media. On social media, the hashtag number "deport your own wife" wasn't just trending, it was shattering all previous records, eclipsing celebrity gossip and even international headlines. Then came the flood, the personal stories. A TikTok video flashed on screen. Rosa Alvarado, 40s, sat at her kitchen table, her eyes red-rimmed, a faded photograph of her husband clutched in her hand. Her voice was raw, trembling with barely contained emotion. "They sent my Daniel away 5 years ago for an old form. No criminal record, just paperwork. They said rules are rules. They showed him no mercy. Well, if rules are rules, then deport your own wife, Mr. Trump. Give us the same justice. Give my children their father back." The video, raw, powerful, and tearful, went hyper-viral, hitting tens of millions of views in mere hours. It was shared by activists, celebrities, and ordinary people across the political spectrum. Civil rights groups, religious leaders, and even some moderate conservatives began issuing calls for accountability, demanding consistency in the application of immigration laws. The political fallout was immediate and severe. More GOP lawmakers, rattled by the public outcry and plunging poll numbers, began quietly distancing themselves, expressing thinly veiled concerns about the strategy. Democrats, emboldened, spoke more directly on immigration reform, seizing the moral high ground. The national conversation shifted dramatically. It was no longer just about policy. It became a question of moral consistency, leadership character, and the visible, heartbreaking cost of hypocrisy. The Chaos Rally became a symbol not just of a campaign losing control, but of a nation confronting its own deeply ingrained double standards. The demand for accountability, amplified by countless personal stories, reverberated across every demographic, leaving an undeniable mark on the public consciousness. As the nation shifted beneath their feet, The Republican leadership, trapped in the eye of this hurricane, desperately sought a way out, but found only growing dissension and the chilling realization that their old tactics were utterly spectacularly failing. What happens when desperate power players realize their carefully constructed fortress is crumbling from within? This was the moment the unified front fractured and the true cost of relentless controversy became undeniable. The opulent, sterile room in the Capitol Hill Club, where the GOP strategists had met before, was now a scene of unmitigated panic. The air crackled with desperation, thick with the scent of stale coffee and fear. Russell Crane, House Majority Leader, looked utterly exhausted, his face etched with strain. Pete Farnell, Kendra LeMay, and Dominic Raine, along with other senior party figures, were present, their expressions grim. The polls, they're catastrophic, not just bad. Catastrophic. Crane's voice was strained, hoarse. Trust in our immigration policy among Latino voters is down 15 points. Suburban women are fleeing our party like rats from a sinking ship. This isn't just a dip, it's a damn freefall. Kendra LeMay, tapping her pen furiously on a legal pad, reported, "The rally footage is being dissected, frame by frame. The chant, the fights, it makes us look out of control, like we've lost the plot." And Crockett's latest interview, she's doubled down. She's explicitly connecting it to real families, making it about systemic injustice. She's winning the moral argument whether we like it or not. Pete Farnell slammed a fist on the table. We tried to paint her as disrespectful. We tried to call it a personal attack. It didn't work. The public isn't buying the attack on a classy woman narrative anymore. They're asking if she's right. They're asking about the hypocrisy. Dominic Raine, hesitant, almost afraid to speak, revealed, "Sir, we have the documents from 1996, Melania's original visa process. We went through them again. They're not airtight. There were technicalities, modeling work that clearly predated the proper work visa. Small violations, yes, but under their interpretation of current law, potentially problematic." Crane stared at him, his face contorted. The silence was heavy. "So, what are you saying, Raine? We release them and prove her damn point for her? That there is a double standard? That we're complicit?" Raine's voice was barely audible. "It's a calculated risk, a desperate one. It might calm the storm by showing some transparency, by getting ahead of the story. Or it could backfire spectacularly, opening up a Pandora's box of renewed scrutiny." LeMay added, "We need something, anything. Melania's silence is now being interpreted as indifference, as arrogance. Howard Leeds on Morning View said it sends a message that she feels untouched by the same rules applied to everyone else. That's not just devastating, it's toxic." Robert Vance, a junior congressman from Nevada, spoke up, his voice surprisingly firm. "What if we just tell the truth? Admit there were technical issues, but pivot. Argue for compassion and a second chance for everyone. Pivot the narrative to mercy." Farnell scoffed. "Mercy? Vance, are you insane? That's not our brand. Our base expects law and order. They expect toughness." Vance, frustrated, pushed back. "Our base is starting to ask why the rules bend for some and not others. I got a call from a constituent yesterday, a die-hard Trump supporter since 2016, and even he asked me point blank, if I got audited, I'd have to show receipts. Why can't she? This isn't just about the left anymore. It's about our own people seeing the hypocrisy." Crane slammed his fist on the table. "We need a drastic play, a forced statement from her, a public apology from Crockett that we demand and get, an ethics committee censure that actually sticks and makes her disappear. What about a public, primetime address from the president where he personally debunks every single claim?" The room descended into a cacophony of desperate, panicked ideas, none of them good. The Chaos Rally had exposed more than just a single insult. It had laid bare the deep, irreconcilable divisions within the party itself. The cracks in the GOP's united front were now gaping chasms, open for all to see, proving that the chaos Jasmine Crockett unleashed was far from contained. As the political establishment fractured, the echoes of the rally, the unyielding questions, and the chilling silence from a tower in New York would leave an indelible mark, changing the very fabric of the national conversation. What if a single, brutal question could shatter an image, derail a campaign, and fundamentally alter the way an entire nation perceives truth and justice? This is the story of that enduring legacy. Weeks passed since the rally, and the arena, now empty, bore silent witness to the lingering impact. The ground outside was still littered with discarded signs, stark reminders of the day the rally devolved into pandemonium. Some read, "Deport your own wife." Others hastily scrawled, "Rules for thee, not for me." A faded poster of Trump stared blankly from a light pole, a silent testament to the storm. The image of the chaotic rally had become indelible, a searing symbol of a campaign losing control, a leader caught in his own web of contradictions, his own words turned against him. In her Capitol Hill office, Jasmine Crockett, though tired, remained resolute. Her staffer, Chloe, brought her the latest poll numbers. "Congresswoman, the latest poll numbers are out. It's astounding. The president's approval rating has plummeted, and trust in the administration's immigration policies is in freefall, especially among independents and swing voters." Jasmine nodded, unsurprised, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. "The system is rigged for the few. I said it then, I say it now. People are seeing it. The silence says more than any of us ever could. It screams." Sarah informed her. "They're trying to force a censure motion against you in the House. Again, they're gathering signatures, and some conservative commentators are calling you un-American for even daring to speak." Crockett's dry smile deepened. "If speaking truth makes me un-American, then what does that make the people deporting families over paperwork, the ones breaking families apart?" She stood, walking to the window, looking out at the majestic Capitol building. They thought they could bury this. They thought the public wouldn't stay focused. They thought they could distract with outrage and personal attacks. But this time, people aren't losing interest. Because the silence around Melania, the refusal to acknowledge the basic question, is becoming louder than any statement they could have made. It's becoming unbearable. News anchors on every major network echoed the sentiment. "The chaos rally is still reverberating throughout the political landscape," one reported. "The administration has struggled to regain its footing on immigration, and the questions surrounding the First Lady's past, fueled by Congresswoman Crockett's viral challenge, remain unanswered, creating an unprecedented public reckoning." A clip from a recent Trump speech played. He was visibly more subdued than usual, his booming bluster replaced by a forced calm. He pointedly avoided the topic of immigration. The chant, "Deport your own wife," had become too potent a weapon against him, a spectre haunting his every public appearance. Meanwhile, in an immigration advocacy center, Rosa Alvarado, her voice stronger now, spoke to a group of families. "When I saw that video and that congresswoman said what she said, I felt like someone finally saw us. Someone finally said what we've all been feeling. They said rules matter, but who they apply to matters more." She held up a worn photograph of her husband. "My Daniel is still gone. They still won't give him a second chance, and they still won't explain. But now at least people are asking why. They are asking for accountability, not just for us, but for everyone." In the opulent Oval Office, Donald Trump was alone. He watched a news segment discussing Melania's continued, impenetrable silence. Her silence, once a hallmark of her quiet dignity, is now being seen by many as a powerful symbol of privilege and an unwillingness to confront the very policies her husband champions. It's a silence that speaks volumes, echoing the very double standard critics claim. Trump snorted in disgust, jabbing the remote, killing the TV. The sudden quiet of the Oval Office felt suffocating. He walked to the massive window, staring out at the expansive lawn, his posture stiff, defeated. The words, "Deport your own wife," seemed to echo in the cavernous room, a constant mocking refrain in his mind. The White House never released Melania's full immigration history. The questions were never answered. The papers stayed sealed. But the message, for the American public, was clear. The truth, however inconvenient, had been laid bare. The chaos promised in the title was not a fleeting moment, it was the birth of an enduring question. A question that had forever stained the former president's image, forced an entire nation to confront its own uncomfortable truths, and proven that sometimes the loudest statement isn't a speech, but a searing, unyielding silence. The rally had erupted, the insult had gone viral, and the promise of chaos was undeniably delivered, forever etched into the political memory.